All right, so this is a talk I gave at DEF CON a couple of years ago. I did a lot of Android work. All started because I went to a security convention. There was a guy there that said he had a daughter that was like 3, and she was playing Android games, and they were too hard. And he said, could I make them easier? And he showed how he hacked in and changed the game to make the bad guys move slower and stuff. And I said, that's really easy. You can just get right into Android apps and modify them. And I thought that was very interesting, so I started doing that. And because I didn't care about games, what I cared about was serious apps. So I said, let's look at what should be the most secure apps in the world. So I looked at the top 10 banks, insurance companies, and stockbrokers. And I found that their apps were extremely insecure. And even with my very limited skills, I was able to quickly modify them. And so that's the thing. The standards are very bad. By the way, iOS apps, as far as I can tell, are just as bad as Android apps. They're just harder to get at. The iOS, which is on iPhones, the iPhone operating system provides a much more secure environment. So apps that are written poorly are in fact less dangerous. The operating system protects them. But Android is very, very unprotected, as we're going to see. So OWASP is the company. It's a open source project. It's a group people join from all parts of the tech industry, and they make lists of vulnerabilities to help guide people, and they have the mobile top 10 vulnerabilities. And all right, I'll just go ahead. I'll mention a couple as I'm going to find them. So let's talk about the worst apps in the world. This is the one. I went around and demonstrated this one all over the world in Sri Lanka and everywhere else for years. This was the most spectacular failure I'd ever found. I told the company they didn't care. For years, it worked this way. Equity Pandit, an investment app from India that even has a certification of some kind, although not a security certification, but some kind of functionality certification, and yet their app is amazingly terrible. I'll have this set up later so you can see it. You can run the app in an emulator, and you can view the log, and you can view the network traffic. And if you just look at the on-device log, the syslog of Android, then when you log in, if you log in with the wrong password, you will see in the log, login details checking does not match. The real password is this. Here's the right password, here's the wrong password. The user typed in this password, but the real password is that one. So that's really appalling. I mean, this is not how you do it. The way you design a web app or an iPhone app, or a web page or an app, when you log in, you send the password to the server. On the server, it compares it to the right answer, and then it just sends a signal saying wrong. It doesn't send the right password to your device to do the comparison. That's stupid. That just makes it easy to steal. So I gave people homework. You have to steal my password out of my account. And when I taught this class in Saudi Arabia, they freaked. They said, that's illegal. I said, well, you don't have to hack in the server or anything. You just have to try to log into my account. I said, I think that's still illegal. Anyway, I don't think it's illegal here, although now that I think about it, it might be a little more illegal than I thought it was at the time. But anyway, so by the way, after I gave this talk at DEF CON, they finally patched the damn thing after me telling them for years. So that was pretty spectacularly bad. And then another one that was almost as bad was University of Houston. I did a lot of colleges at one time because I thought naively that colleges might care about security enough to care about my vulnerability reports, which was emphatically not true. However, so I went to the University of Houston, and they have an alumni app. When the alumni, in case you don't know, the alumni are the most important people at colleges. This is why football is the most important activity at colleges, because the only reason the people that graduate come back is to go to the football games, and they donate money to the college. And that's how colleges mostly make money. So the alumni are the VIPs. You treat them well, you have champagne breakfasts and everything, and they come back for the homecoming queen and the football, and that's how it all works. So they made a special app just for the alumni, and it looked real slick and professional. But I wondered, there was this place where you could search for yourself in the database. You just type in the first 2 letters of your name and it would find you. I said, well, I wonder how that works. So I just put it in an Android emulator and ran it through Burp, which is what we're going to do later tonight, so you can examine the network traffic. So when I search for somebody, it sends a request up to the software, and notice it sends a request that's not very big. This is the request down here, and the response is 350 kilobytes of data. Now, all I'm doing is typing in the first few letters of a name, and all I'm supposed to be getting back is the whole name. So that ought to be like 10 bytes or 50 bytes. 300,000 bytes of data are sent back in response to this request. And what it is the entire database. Every every alumni, their social security number, their credit card number, their address, their phone number. The whole database comes down every time you make a request, so it can do all the processing on the phone. Now, I was told by people when I discussed this that this is something you get taught in some app development classes because you don't want to have poor performance if the network connectivity is poor. So you put everything on the phone and do the processing locally. But anyway, that's amazingly bad. And so I wanted to tell them. Now, I'd already been through the circus of trying to tell people, companies, and colleges and everybody about their vulnerabilities, and it never works. If you try to contact somebody from out of the blue to tell them they have a vulnerability, they will ignore you, or they will blame you for hacking them, or they will yell at you. You almost never get anything done. But now I know how to do it. I contacted the University of Houston. First, I contacted CCDC, which is the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition that we're in. This is where the most important security colleges compete. And I asked if the University of Houston was in the game. And they said, yes, the founder is here. So I contacted that person. This is what you do. You find someone who goes to hacker conferences or someone who does hacking competitions, and you tell them, because they understand how the game works. And then they'll fix it. If you talk to random people, you'll get a random administrator or a lawyer or an IT person that doesn't understand security, and they will just freak out and go nuts and not fix it and blame you and start lawsuits and horrible things. But if you talk to anybody that's actually a security professional, then you get an intelligent answer. You guys have a flaw, you need to patch it. Okay. And so they took down this app. They said, we're redesigning this app. And a few months later it came up, and I imagine it's fixed by now. I think I took a quick look and it looked better. So anyway, that's pretty amazing. They're not all that bad. Those are the outrageously bad apps. Most of them have less extreme vulnerabilities. And so here's some of the banks I did. I did the top 10 banks, insurance brokers, and stock traders. And you can easily reverse engineer Android apps and modify them because their Java code is compiled. Now, Java is a cross-platform operating system, which is a cross-platform language, because it does not compile to machine code. It compiles to something called bytecode, which is a machine-independent language, and that runs in a Java virtual machine on any platform. So you can write an app in Java, and you can run it on Linux or Windows in a Java virtual machine. That's why people love it. But what it means is, what you have when you have an Android app is you have this bytecode, and the bytecode is very easily turned back into Java. This is not true if you have an app written in like C++ and compiled down to machine code. It's relatively difficult to decompile the machine code. We're going to do it in the malware analysis class 126. But it's hard, but you don't have to do that with Android apps. For all intents and purposes, you get the source code. So let's try TD Ameritrade. So if you download the TD Ameritrade app, a stockbroker trading app, and you log in with your name and password and hit login, then it puts the password in the log. Now, that's not the right password from the database. Only Equity Pandit was that stupid. It's the password you typed in. But still, what this means is, in order to get this, all right, this is the first thing, visible to all apps on device. This is a vulnerability, one of the top 10 vulnerabilities, putting sensitive data in a foolish place where other people can find it. So that's not a good practice. Okay. But what I wanted to do was, and then we're getting there. All right, there's Mayo Clinic Medical Transport, pretty famous name. They have this app, which I guess, I'm not quite sure what it's for, but I think it's so people in ambulances can look up facts. So it's got just textbooks from what look like an ordinary medical database, but they're protected by a password. You can't get in without the password. And I said, well, I wonder how hard it would be to get past that password. So I bring down the app, unpack it with APK tool, which unpacks the app into the Smalley code, which is the bytecode. Smalley is almost as readable as Java, though. And in the Smalley, I just found a variable called secret password. And right there it is. And I logged in with that password, and I could see the top secret information, which was not super exciting. It was just pages from a medical textbook. But anyway, then I notified the developer. He told me, get lost, you're spamming me, this doesn't matter, I don't want to hear from you, you're some kind of bum, which is what you always get. That's why professionals say, don't even bother telling people if you find a vulnerability. Unless they're paying you for a pen test, don't tell them and let them get hacked. That is probably the most professional thing to do. They say if they're too dumb, now if they don't hire you and they don't have a bug bounty, then they're too stupid to hear it. In practice, that is generally true. I was dumb enough to try it for a while. They call this white hatting. It's considered a foolish activity in information security, and I must say my experience has justified that. I think I added up after doing hundreds of these, and the percentage of them that got fixed was like 2%. And not because of my report, because they went to a next version of something. So basically, telling people about security problems is useless until they are prepared to listen. And when they understand, they will have a bug bounty program or something. By the way, let me mention that I have one. Not a bug bounty, but I have a disclosure policy. If you go to my webpage, samsglass.info, and go to the bottom where I have this extra, someplace down here I have a disclosure policy. There it is. And everybody should have this. Oh my, it doesn't show very well in this browser, which I got in dark mode, but I'll bring it back to this one. All right. Even if you're too cheap to have a bug bounty, which I am, you can at least have a disclosure policy. And what this says is if you find a vulnerability for my stuff and you tell me, then I will put you on the Hall of Fame. I don't have t-shirts or anything to give you, and anyway, it's pretty easy, not too hard to say, and this is hard to explain to management though. The best way to secure the company is to publish a statement lowering our ability to punish researchers. We could sue these people and lock them up, or punish them and prosecute them, but by promising not to prosecute them, we will make the company more secure. That requires a relatively high level of understanding of security. At first, they say, that's insane. You're telling people it's okay to hack us. Well, the point is the security researchers are the good guys. They want to hack you, and all they would like is like a pat on the back or an acknowledgement, and then they will tell you, and they're probably not going to steal the data. That's the rules. You can't steal the data and go sell it and ruin the company or something. Those are the good guys. You want to let the good guys in and listen to them. The bad guys are coming whether you like it or not.
You call them like ethical hackers or something?
Yeah, that's the idea. Ethical hackers. And so anyway, everybody should have a disclosure policy, but it's hard to explain this to management unless they get pretty educated about security. Anyway, so now FTC punished Fandango and Credit Karma a few years ago for breaking HTTPS. Now HTTPS is the protocol used for almost all websites, like for example mine. My website is now secure with HTTPS. If you click that, it tells you the connection is secure, the certificate is valid, and so on. So there's an HTTPS certificate. This means when you connect to my server, it gets an ID card from the server, and then it verifies it with a trusted third party before the connection can be made. So you know you're really talking to my server and nothing else, not a fake imitation of my server. And then it encrypts all the data so people in the middle can't see it. Now, go ahead.
Is that like, you have to pay like $200 or $300 a year for that?
You used to, but about 8 years ago, Cloudflare came out, and Cloudflare would just add it to your site for free. That's how I do it. And now there's a Let's Encrypt company gives free certificates to everybody. So almost everybody using those free certificates. Before that, they used to charge hundreds of dollars a year for this. But what happened is Google, there were a lot of attacks where you could break into people's accounts. You could hack into Gmail accounts. They got in my Gmail account at DEF CON. I was on the wall sheet. And so Google, to respond to that, they went to 100% HTTPS. And there was a belief about 12 years ago when this happened that the encryption would cost so much processor time that it would make it much more expensive to run websites. But Google demonstrated that you could move everything to HTTPS and it only cost like 1% more. So that sort of opened the floodgates and set the standard, and everybody else pretty much had to move to HTTPS. So now almost every website is encrypted. You find very few HTTP sites anymore. Right, but anyway, the point is, if you make an HTTPS website, you're supposed to get the certificate, and then you're supposed to verify it with a third party. Now, the web server has no idea whether you've done that or not. But your browser is supposed to check. And if it doesn't pass that validation check, your browser is supposed to warn you and say, don't go here. This is not really the site you think you're going to. This is some kind of fake site pretending to be that. However, you can turn that off. And that's what these guys did. They turned off the validation. So even though the app would work, you could also send it to a fake website, and it would also send the data to that website without noticing it was going to the wrong place. So that's violating the certificate validation, and the FTC has punished them. They have a boilerplate statement like, we protect your data with standard bank grade security or something, and the FTC declared that this practice is not meeting your security promises, and they were punished. So, that's a vulnerability you'll learn how to pick up here. It's pretty common, and when I tell people, I send these vulnerability reports, I do say, in case you're interested, you could actually be punished for making this security error. And I don't know how much effect it has, but it made me feel more like a professional to tell them that. Anyway, then of course there's passwords. So if you log in to a mobile app, you log into anything like Facebook or your bank or anything, when you go back to that app later, you don't have to log in again. That would drive you nuts, having to type in your password over and over again on that little screen. The more secure apps now check biometrics. But anyway, most apps you seem to stay logged in forever. Now, how can it do that? It has to somehow remember who you are. So let's take a look. Target does it the right way. They do it the way websites do it. This is Target Australia, happened to be the app I tested. So I downloaded the Target Australia app from the Google App Store, and I did a user login. And so when you do a user login, you send a request up there that contains a name and password. And when you look at the response, you'll get a cookie, target token, this long random letters. So they send me this random number. That is my cookie. That is my authorization cookie. It is not my password. It's a cookie. If I send that cookie up to the server, it will figure out who I am. But if anybody steals it off my phone, it's not going to do them any particular good, except they'll be able to get just my account. Anyway, this is the right way to do it. This is how websites do it. When you click the Remember Me, you save a cookie, which is just a long random number, and only the server knows what that number is. This is the right way to do it. Now, the reason why there's a difference is because of password reuse. Most people use the same password over and over everywhere. So leaking your password out is a far bigger problem than leaking out a cookie to one website, which only lets people in that one website. Anyway, so this is Staples, for example, does it the wrong way. And this is the most common way I found in most apps when I did it a few years ago. So I went to Staples, downloaded their app, and then I looked at the locally stored data, and they had a thing called encrypted password stored in the data directory of that app. Now, right away, this is a problem. Why would you store the password on the phone at all, even in an encrypted form? There's no need for that. It should just be storing a cookie value, which is not related to my password. So this is already wrong, but it gets worse. How do you encrypt it? What kind of key did you use? Well, I found a website that has a nice list. Here's how you store sensitive information on the phone. The number one best way is don't do it. If you think you need to store a secret on a phone, you're wrong. Go through your logic and think of why do you think you need to store something like a password on a phone? This is a really bad idea. You can just redesign your app's flow to not do anything this stupid. It's just fundamentally wrong. However, if you want to do it, then you use the Android keychain. And iOS has one too called the Key Vault, I think. There's a special encrypted storage for secrets that you can use, which would be pretty secure. Or you can encrypt it with a public key where the private key is only on your server. Then nobody can get in. But what most of them do is this. They encrypt with a private key and then they try to hide the key on the phone. Another thing is just store it in plain text. Now let me just check to see if there's questions coming in Twitch. Do we need to do anything in the City College Canvas? No, you don't. We'll just use the other Canvas. And you don't need an ad code, Twisted. If anybody wants to add, just make an ad request and I'll approve them. There are no longer any ad codes. What's that?
I figured out how to do it.
Oh, good.
Go to your website and save the CRM and then.
Yeah, you work from the CRN seems to work. Okay, yes, if you have trouble adding, let me know, and we'll get help from other students that know how to do it. But anybody who wants to add, just make the request, and I'll approve them after the lecture. All right, so anyway, so that's what this company, I think Staples, what Staples did is number 4. They've encrypted it with a private key. Now the problem is, how are you going to hide the private key on the phone? You haven't really changed anything. You're trying to store the password on the phone. Well, now you're trying to store a private key on the phone. It's really the same problem. And I can read your source code. So here's the first test I tried. I made a password like this. Now this is a password I learned from Web Application Hacker's Handbook, 32 identical characters, then some other characters just to pass their password complexity rules. The point is, when it encrypts this, if it's using the electronic codebook mode of encryption, it will encode blocks of 16 letters individually. And when I look at the encrypted password, it is in fact that way. The first 16 bytes are the same as the next 16 bytes. So this is another flaw. You should not be using this mode to encrypt anything. It means this is a minor flaw in encryption as life goes, but it's a foolish way to do it. And then I looked for the Smalley code. So this is the reason why Smalley code is so easy to read, is because you have strings like encrypted password in here. You can just look for the word password in the app, and you'll find the code that handles the password. It's pretty appalling. And so down here I see the username and password are used here, and then it calls something called GU and something called M. This means they have tried to protect the code with a worthless free Google product that changes some of the names of some of your methods into just single letters. It doesn't, however, take out the useful stuff like encrypted password and username, so it's completely pointless. But anyway, they apparently did that. So I have to look at the GU and the M method, And when I go down there, I find out how they make the password. And it's outrageously simple. Let me figure out why I tried to zoom in, now I gotta zoom out. All right, yes, this will do. So what it does, it takes the brand of the phone, the device name, the model number, and the serial number, and then the package name, and makes a string, and that's how it makes the key. So here's the key: extra salt, generic, VBox, Galaxy Nexus, API 18, app.staples. It takes that string, makes a SHA-1 hash of it, and takes the first 128 bits, and that's the key. So that's how you make a secret key if you're a complete idiot. I mean, obvious. I can read your source code, I can see how you made the key, and I verified, of course, that it worked. So I just went online and tested that key to encrypt AAA, and I get the encrypted code that I saw before in the stored saved password. And so I notified them. They said it would be fixed. They didn't do it. And so after several months went by, I made them into homework and made videos and so on. So, all right. So there's videos and homework about it. Let me see. I think I'm somehow zoomed in wrong here. There we go. All right. So I made some videos of it. And then they sent me a nasty gram from their lawyer. They said, "You're violating some law." Well, if you look in our terms of service for using the app, it says you can't reverse engineer the app. And I said, "Terms of service?" I didn't look at the terms of service. So I opened the terms of service. The first thing it has in screaming big letters is, "Do not reverse engineer this app." And I said, "Well, gee, it does say that." So I asked my lawyer, and he said, "They can't tell you that. They can't tell you that you don't have the right to check the security of an app. You're allowed to check it. That's fair use." So anyway, that's what I did. I didn't take down the videos, and they went away. So I notified them. Now, they did fix it. I was giving a talk in Washington, D.C. before a bunch of federal government security people, and I was going to demonstrate this, and it suddenly stopped working on that day. So I think, and what they did, though, they didn't actually patch the app. What they did, as far as I know, I haven't tested, but all they did was put a barrier in so it'll notice if you're running on a rooted phone. See, normal phones, you're running as a user, not root. But to do the security tests, you want to be a rooted phone. And a lot of apps put this security measure in, where they notice when they're on a rooted phone and they won't run. So that's what they did. I suspect behind this barrier is the same vulnerable app, but I didn't bother to check it. And this is something Bennett Shaw, security researcher, points out. This is what you get. We have patched the vulnerability you reported. This is kind of what they do. They put a block so that the exact path you were following is now blocked, but there are plenty of other paths that will accomplish the same thing. This is what you normally get in response to a vulnerability report. Anyway, then there's people who just store your password in plain text on the phone. Right there it is, username and password, just stick in plain text on the phone, like Ace Hardware, McDonald's, and Menards. And plain text login, sending your password in plain text over the network, like Trader Joe's Fan, not the official Trader Joe's, I think it's 7-Eleven Mexico, just sending your data up unencrypted. And then the one I mentioned before, broken SSL, where it does encrypt things with HTTPS, but it doesn't verify the certificate. And this happens a lot. What's interesting in this one, though, this particular app, I thought this was an Amazon app, but it's not from Amazon. It's a price tracker for Amazon. Somebody else, not Amazon. See, Amazon prices change. So he wrote an app that will log into your Amazon account and monitor the price and tell you when the price falls to the level you want it to fall to. So he stores your Amazon password and uses it to log into your account periodically on an automated basis. And then he had a new feature in his app. I tested it, and his app broke SSL. I was able to use a forged certificate that was not valid, and it accepted it. And then I looked, that's the point. Fixed bug causing certain users to see only blank screen. That's the bug. That was the HTTPS failure. In certain browsers, when you have an HTTPS failure, you just see a white screen. So he fixed that bug by taking away the certificate validation. But I got rid of that encryption garbage, and now it works fine. I went back and forth like 7 times. He says, "You can't just turn off a fundamental security feature of the web and call it fine." He said, "Sure, it works better now. What's the problem?" And I'm like, anyway, I don't know if he ever fixed it. After like 8 back and forth, he kind of reluctantly said he would fix it, but I don't think he ever understood me claiming that this was actually not a good practice. Anyway, then stored reversible encryption. That's like the ones we saw, Kroger, Safeway, Walgreens, Home Depot. They encrypt it with a private key, and then the private key is easy to recover. So it's just a minor obstacle. So here's Home Depot, for example. You have this thing called encrypted password, and all you have to do is decrypt it. And there was just the secret key was just hard-coded on the app. Secret key and the initialization vector were just there, so you just had to read the app to find the key and password, and then you could decrypt them. I wrote a Python script to do it, and so on. All right, and Walgreens is the same. And there's ones that have multiple vulnerabilities. Delhaize puts the password in the log, breaks SSL, and stores your stuff with insecure local encryption. Publix uses plain text storage and broken SSL. There's a lot of them. So I told all these people, they don't care. But anyway, the reason I do it is because 30 days after I tell them and they ignore me, then I use them for homework. So the homework projects for a long time used a lot of real apps. I think I still have a few left. Anyway, a few people actually fixed things. And one company actually made things worse after I reported it because they're really off the map. But anyway, and iOS apps are harder to test, but you can do some reverse engineering on them. And we'll do a bit of it in this class. We'll talk about it. We're not going to do it hands-on. And I found, by the way, Georgia Weidman's book is very good. One of his, Joe McRae is an East Coast security trainer, works for the NSA and other companies, and he gave a very good talk explaining how to do reverse engineering. And his student, Georgia Weidman, wrote a book that's also very good about pen testing, which had the first explanation of buffer overflows that actually made sense and worked that I could ever find, which is why I was able to make a exploit development class, which was a big leap forward, where you do the binary exploits. That was a big leap forward in technical accomplishments at this college, and it led to amazing things. Some students came in just to take that course, and in particular, this student came in, AxiomX. AxiomX was a Google developer. And when AxiomX found out that there was a exploit development class, he came and took that class and figured I would immediately race to the top, of course, being a real expert, and then he decided to analyze the boot process of iPhones. He was an iPhone expert. And he found a vulnerability called checkrain in the boot process on iPhones that could not be fixed without replacing the hardware. It was the only new jailbreak in 7 years. So it was a huge leap forward in Android security. And so it's kind of nice. I mean, I only have the vaguest understanding of how he did it. But he was a real software developer, and he had never turned his attention to making exploits. And once you go to the dark side, you can have a lot of fun over there. Anyway, other ones I found, like Blue Cross. Here's a fun fact about Blue Cross Blue Shield. They aren't organized at all. They don't have one central app. Every little district makes their own app. So they tend to be horrible. So a bunch of them store passwords insecurely, validate certificates. And then West Point. I was doing colleges, so I tried West Point. Well, it transmits passwords insecurely without encryption at all. And then I tried the Air Force and others, and I found that the entire product line of Straxis Technology, which makes apps for all kinds of schools, military and otherwise, they all had the same flaw. So I contacted the developer directly, and they fixed the whole line of apps. And by the way, Zillow had another flaw like this, and so did this Stock Options Center. And this one caught my attention. This is the City College app. City College app was made by a company called Dubs Lab, and the iOS apps were insecure, the whole line of them. So again, I contacted them, and supposedly they fixed it. And then I found these financial apps. Jack Henry and Associates put passwords in the log, and so does Fiserv. So anyway, I did a whole lot of apps. It's pretty fun. Just make a list, any list of apps you want, and you only have to try like 10 or 20 of them before you start finding simple vulnerabilities. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. And the point I'd like to say is none of this should ever happen. You're supposed to have management. And management does not have to be very technical, and usually they aren't, but management should ask you simple questions. What data did you collect? Why do you need to collect that data? If you do need to collect that data, where do you store it? Is it encrypted? What algorithm did you use? Where did you put the key? These are not complicated questions. If you can't get simple, clear, intelligent answers to these questions, your product is in trouble. And management should be watching this, but apparently they aren't. I'm amazed. Nobody seems to be auditing their Android apps. They just hire the cheapest developer they can find that does some horrible process, and then they take the app and it appears to work, and they just use it, send it off to their customers without doing the most basic tests. So what we're going to do in this class is very simple security tests to catch big problems, not thorough tests, but the easiest ones, but that's enough to find quite a few of the problems. So let me check here and see if there's any more questions. You're going to waitlist? Good, I'll approve everybody can waitlist. The username and password to get to the Splunk materials, I'll tell you after I stop the recording. You would still need some of the user's information to hack into their account. Possibly, yes. And by the way, this is another issue. I mean, how does anybody get stored data on your phone? They would get it if you put a malicious app on your phone, which is quite common in Android, less common for iOS, or they would get it if they steal your phone. And the hard drive is not encrypted. The SSD is not encrypted, which is, iPhones are encrypted, but not all Androids are. And by the way, A fun fact to know is last week, Kaspersky came out with a report showing that there's been a secret hardware backdoor into all iPhones for the last 4 generations, apparently put in for the NSA under duress, although nobody can admit that. But there has been a secret way for the government to snoop on what's on your phone for at least the 4 generations of iPhone, and so I think it's probably reasonable to assume that all of our devices have received similar pressure from the NSA to give the government a secret backdoor into it, which is the kind of thing conspiracy theorists used to say. It appears to be true. We can't really prove this, but the evidence for the iPhone is very clear. And the iPhone is the most secure, trusted platform for very good reason. iPhone is your most secure computing platform, but ever since 9/11, the US government has very strong desire to inspect what people are doing, and they have the legal authority to do it. So, you know, American companies banned Huawei, and they want to ban TikTok because they say the Chinese government could be spying on stuff going through that Chinese app. We wouldn't do that over here. We are totally doing the same thing over here. Other companies ought to refuse to use American stuff because our government will just totally spy on it because we do. Anyway, yeah, the Patriot Act. Yeah. Yes, Apple did fix the bug. So it was not a bug. They removed this exact backdoor in the latest hardware generation, but the explanations I've heard say that it was impossible to find the backdoor, and probably they just have another one that we haven't found yet. But nobody knows that. But anyway, so let me stop this recording, and then